From the famous bus driver analogy to shots thrown one after the other, the feud between Durant and Barkley has been legendary. Let's take a look at the history between the two and examine where they're at. So, how did all this prime beef start? Honestly, there's few things more entertaining than when two NBA legends go at it in a war of words. After all, who can forget the pure entertainment that was the Shaq and Kobe feud? Well, the modern NBA age has its own warring factions, with the battlegrounds being drawn between Charles Barkley and current superstar Kevin Durant. Basically, the whole drama started last year when, on an Inside the NBA segment, Barkley voiced some thoughts regarding KD's rings with the Warriors.
I'm anti-social media. I've never tweeted.
Why is that?
Because when you're a celebrity, people can say anything they want to you.
In fact, he went so far as to say he wouldn't really count KD among the greats because he was more of a bus rider than a bus driver.
If you ain't driving the bus, don't walk around talking about you're a champion. If you riding the bus, I don't want to hear it.
The Phoenix Suns legend was obviously referring to the popular idea that Durant's rings don't mean much because he was part of a stacked super team.
You're the bus driver and you got all that pressure where you have to play well or you're going to get the blame. That's a different animal.
The only way he can come close to earning Barkley's respect is by being the kind of player that can lead a team to a final all on his own. Of course, the fact that Durant hasn't made it back into a final since he was traded to the Nets, where he's very much the driver, doesn't help.
When you're a star, your minutes should go up, your points should go up.
Of course, KD wasn't too happy with what he heard, leading to some pretty legendary clapbacks. After all, KD is no stranger to using social media like a king for his beefs, and this time was no exception.
But what you say to them can get you in trouble. So you like social media.
He responded on Instagram, putting up two separate pictures of Charles with two different teams. In the first, Chuck's standing with Hakeem, Pippen, and Drexler, and the second has him with Malone, Cheeks, and Tony during his time with the Rockets and 76ers. Clearly, the superstar has some thoughts about Barkley's comments about stacked teams, given that the man's played with some superstars himself. In fact, he straight up implied in the caption that both teams carried the Hall of Famer to his legendary status.
It's integrated in our sport and our life now, so there's no hiding from it. So I just try to adapt.
Of course, he didn't stop there, going to Twitter to fire even more shots at the veteran. In fact, he straight up just called Barkley an old dude who's jealous and bitter that he doesn't get as much money and fame as modern players.
Yeah, I mean, I have ideas and we sit down and talk about them and flesh them out. And I mean, I'm obviously...
Ouch. Talk about some real bad blood between two legends. The feud didn't end there, with Barkley pouring some new fuel over the fire recently. After all, you know you're beefing when you call someone soft on live television. Chuck really likes mentioning Durant on TV. Some would say it's his favorite hobby when he's feeling a little bored.
You don't think he was the bus driver in Golden State?
No, I do
You
not.
don't think he was the best player on that team?
No, I do not.
Wow.
Well, this time, the man went on 60 Minutes to talk about what he feels the problem with Durant is. According to the Suns legend, there's one major thing that's holding Durant back from really being one of the greats, and that's the fact that, according to him, the man just cannot take any criticism. In fact, Barkley talked about how this is a recurring problem with the new generation of basketball. Basically, players these days take offense to criticism instead of seeing it as constructive, turning them into hotheads. This isn't the first time he's called Durant sensitive. In fact, he pretty much said the same thing at the end of their last big feud. Funnily enough, Durant wasn't the only superstar that Barkley took shots at during this interview. He even went after the legendary Michael Jordan, calling him problematic for the exact same reason. Of course, just because he wasn't the only person the comment was aimed at doesn't mean Durant didn't have quite a lot to say about it. He went straight to Twitter to deliver the shut up call to Chuck. To say that Durant's finger is pretty quick on the quote tweet trigger is probably the understatement of the year. I genuinely cannot figure out how the man has the time and energy to respond as quickly to potential beef as he does. Pretty much immediately after Barkley's statement, Durant went straight to his favorite bit of social media to tell him exactly what he thought. And it wasn't pretty. Durant straight up said he was tired and exhausted of the criticism, something he's been a target of ever since he joined the Warriors years ago. In fact, he basically told Barkley to keep his name out of his mouth, flat out saying he would never respect anything the analyst says. But what do their respective fans think about everything that's going on? Well, opinions are pretty hilariously divided between both camps. Some fans really do just want to watch the world burn, or they want to shove popcorn into their mouths as their favorite stars call each other dumb on the internet. In fact, some fans went to Twitter to beg the two to get into a wrestling ring to settle things once and for all. Of course, you also had some fans making pretty valid points in support for both players. Durant supporters have pointed out that the accusations of sensitivity were pretty unfair, given that Barkley's pretty much been baiting Durant for years. In fact, one fan even said that since there's been no complaints for new Phoenix members' coaches, Barkley's theory has no legs to stand on. Of course, accusations of boomer behavior also flew, with people mentioning the famous incident where Barkley tried to spit on a heckler. Clearly, sensitivity isn't anything new in the NBA. You also had people rushing to support Chuck's take on the beef. Fans of the Hall of Famer straight up said that a prime Barkley would pretty much eat Durant alive, on and off the court. After all, Barkley grew up in an era where NBA stars had to have notoriously thick skins to survive even a single game. Whatever the fans think, however, there is some light glimmering at the end of the tunnel between the two legends. I mean, KD has been pretty vocal about his respect for Barkley recently. Sometimes we forget that, even in the middle of beef, NBA players and analysts really are just humans. Durant grew up watching Barkley tear up the hardwood with the Suns, and made his admiration for the man's contributions known. In an episode of the ETC, when the topic of Barkley inevitably came up, Durant revealed how he really feels about the guy. In fact, he straight up called him a legend. The new addition to the Suns roster pointed out that he could never ignore the impact Barkley had on the team he now plays for, expressing deep respect for all of his achievements as a Suns alumni. Just because he doesn't agree with Chuck's skills as an analyst doesn't mean he thinks the man was anything other than a legendary player. For his part, Barkley also had some positive things to say about the two-time champion. In fact, he sees him as a key part of the Suns offense. Barkley is a Phoenix alumni through and through, and no beef will ever get in the way of what he cares about the most: the success and health of the team that launched him into superstardom. According to Barkley, Durant is a fantastic addition to the Suns roster. Honestly, the man is an offensive machine, and his inclusion into the team has made it one of the strongest offensive powerhouses in the league. This isn't the first time Charles has had a good word to say about Durant. In fact, he's repeatedly called him a strong and talented player, one of the finest to touch a basketball, even despite all his criticisms of him. In the end, it's clear that the beef doesn't mean that the two don't have some kind of soft spot for each other. It's like J. Cole said, they act like two legends cannot coexist. Well guys, there's all the latest scoop on the blistering Charles and Kevin Durant feud.